All right, let's just dive right into it. Welcome to today's explainer, put together specifically for the focused learner. Think of this as your ultimate masterclass, kind of like the absolute highest yield study guide you will ever need to truly master the concept of life skills. Whether you're prepping for a major academic exam, writing a huge comprehensive essay, or gearing up for one of those high-stakes job interviews, you are in the exact right place. We're going to unpack the formal frameworks, the history, and the real-world applications of these skills, basically transforming complex theory into clear, actionable knowledge. So, let's get into it. Our syllabus for today is pretty tightly structured. We've got 5 key sections to run through. First, what are life skills? Second, livelihood versus survival skills. Third, the 10 core skills. Fourth, fundamentals and history. And finally, passing the real test. Let's hit it. Starting off with Section 1, what are life skills? Defining the core competencies. Listen, if you take nothing else away from this first section, you absolutely have to lock this definition into your memory. This isn't just some casual, off-the-cuff description. This is the globally recognized standard definition directly from the World Health Organization. Seriously, when you're hit with a core definition question, this is the exact phrasing you want to deploy. Notice the keywords in there, adaptive and positive behavior. It's all about how you equip yourself to deal effectively with everyday challenges. That's the core of it.
Now, what if examiners hit you with a long-form essay question? Well, you need to break down that definition into 6 distinct features. You've got adaptive, which just means you're flexible. You have positive behavior, which is all about maintaining a constructive outlook, even when you're under stress. Universality means, literally everyone across the globe needs them. But the 2 you really want to highlight for those extra points are transferability and learnability. These aren't just genetic traits you're randomly born with. No way. They are learnable. They can be systematically taught and practiced. And they're totally transferable. Basically, the problem-solving skills you use to fix a messy college group project, those are the exact same skills you're going to use to resolve a bottleneck in a corporate boardroom. Oh, and they're entirely interconnected too, because, well, making a good decision requires both critical thinking and self-awareness working together. It's like a giant puzzle. Moving right along to Section 2. Livelihood versus survival skills, the matrix mandate.
So, what is the exact difference between making a living and staying alive? I mean, it sounds almost like a deep philosophical question, doesn't it? But in the context of this study guide, it's actually a highly testable categorization. You really need to be able to cleanly separate the skills required for long-term career building from the skills required for immediate physical preservation. I want you to take a mental screenshot of this comparison matrix right now. It is beautifully structured, and honestly, it's guaranteed to score you extra points. Just look at the focus row. Livelihood is all about economic self-sufficiency, right? While survival is about immediate safety. The nature of livelihood skills is usually technical or professional, whereas survival skills are deeply physical and incredibly reactive. And think about the time horizon here. We're talking long-term career building versus short-term crisis resolution. So say you're learning computer programming or digital marketing. That's a livelihood skill for sure. But administering CPR or escaping a burning building, that is 100% a survival skill. See the difference? Okay, let's jump to Section 3, the 10 core skills, the WHO framework. You see, the World Health Organization doesn't just throw a random list of 10 skills at you. Instead, they group them into 3 distinct pillars: cognitive, social, and emotional. Structuring your understanding and honestly your essays around these 3 specific domains proves that you truly grasp the framework. It shows you know exactly how the human mind processes information, how we interact with the people around us, and how we regulate our own internal feelings. All right, here is your definitive list of the 10 core skills. You're probably going to recognize a bunch of these like self-awareness, creative thinking, and effective communication. But to really stand out and demonstrate absolute mastery on an exam, you can't just rattle off a list. You need to be able to define the nuances of the most complex ones and place them correctly within their respective domains. So let's zoom in on a couple of the heavier hitters. First up is empathy, which sits firmly in the social domain. Now, a super common misconception is that empathy is just, feeling sorry for someone. It's absolutely not. It's the active, conscious ability to project yourself into a completely unfamiliar lived experience. It's all about deeply understanding what life is like for another person, bridging gaps in situations where you might literally have 0 personal background. That is a massive, game-changing asset for social harmony. Then, over in the cognitive domain, we have critical thinking. The absolute most crucial word here is objectively. Critical thinking acts as your mental filter. It's your ability to strip away your personal biases, any intense emotions, and outside assumptions, so you can analyze raw information and experiences purely on their merits. Actually, scratch that. It's more like a super-powered lens that lets you see the facts clearly. This is exactly what sets the stage for effective decision-making. That brings us to Section 4, Fundamentals and History, How We Learn and How It Evolved. This breakdown brilliantly illustrates the linear chain of life skills education, because, let's be real, you can't just hand someone a textbook and expect their everyday habits to magically change. To reach Step 4, which is permanent behavioral change, you absolutely have to start at Step 1, acquiring factual knowledge. Then you move to Step 2, developing an attitude or a belief system around that new knowledge. Step 3 is the active training of the skills themselves. Think of practicing how to actually say no to peer pressure. Only after all that do you finally reach Step 4, where that skill becomes a completely integrated permanent behavior. Now, if you're asked to trace the historical timeline chronologically, here is your definitive roadmap. It all started way back with ancient traditional systems, like the Gurukul system in India or the Greek paideia, which heavily emphasized holistic character development. Then, zooming forward to the 1960s and 70s, humanistic psychologists began prioritizing emotional literacy over just simple rote learning. But the massive turning point, the real catalyst, hit in the 1980s. The global spread of HIV and AIDS tragically proved that teaching pure clinical facts was failing. It just wasn't altering youth behavior. Public health officials quickly realized people desperately needed practical, psychosocial skills to resist negative peer pressure. And that massive crisis led straight into the 1990s, where the WHO formally standardized the 10 core skills that we still use today. And finally, Section 5, Passing the Real Test, Resumes, Interviews, and the STAR method. Look, a great resume might get your foot in the door, but the interview is where your life skills are actually proven. You might find yourself facing any of these formats, from quick telephonic screens to intense panel interviews, or even deliberate stress interviews that are literally designed to test your emotional coping mechanisms. However, behavioral and situational interviews are where your mastery of life skills, specifically your problem-solving, critical thinking, and communication, are most heavily scrutinized. They operate on the core principle that your past performance is the best predictor of your future behavior. So, when an interviewer hits you with one of those tricky situational questions, like, hey, tell me about a time you handled a difficult team member, the STAR method is your absolute cheat code to giving a perfectly structured, data-driven response. S is for situation, where you briefly set the scene. T is for task, meaning you define the exact goal that needed to be achieved. A is for action, your step-by-step resolution. And R is for result, the quantified positive outcome. Now, what is really fascinating about this time allocation is the actual breakdown. Look at that massive 60% slice right there. You should be spending 60% of your time talking about the specific actions you took. A huge mistake candidates make is wasting precious time over-explaining the background situation or the overarching task. Don't do that. The interviewer wants to evaluate your life skills in motion, your specific technical choices, and your individual problem-solving steps. Focus on the action. Wow, we have covered a tremendous amount of ground today, right? From the WHO definitions and the livelihood matrix, all the way down to practical interview strategies. But I want to leave you with this final real-world challenge. Think of a cuff difficulty you personally faced recently. Got one? Okay, how would you map it to the STAR method right now to prove you've mastered these core life skills? Grab a piece of paper, write out the situation, the task, your specific actions, and the quantified result. Mastering that translation is the ultimate proof that you've turned theoretical knowledge into integrated, powerful behavior. Keep learning, keep practicing, and go absolutely crush those exams.